So today we're looking at another reissue watch. Now I know there are loads of these on the market now, and yes, it can be pretty confusing to know which to go for. But these new reissues from Nivada Grenchen tick a lot of boxes. Let's take a look at them now. The watches we have with us today are known as the Chronomaster Aviator Sea Diver from Nivada Grenchen. Besides the rather long name, these watches are recreations of their original models from the 60s. Both of these watches are available with manual wind and automatic movements, starting at 1,570 Swiss franc, which is around £1,300. This lower than expected price point really did catch my attention, as the watches sit in a really competitive price point, ones that fight many of those new brands that are simply just inspired by these original models. So let's run down some of the stats to start with. Both of the models we have with us today are just a hair over 38mm wide, with a lug-to-lug distance of 46.5 mm. Thicknesses differ between the models, with the automatic model coming in at around 15mm thick, and the manual wind models measuring around 14mm. It is worth mentioning that we have included the domed sapphire crystal in this measurement. Solita movements have been used, more specifically the SW510 in the automatic and manual configuration. If you do end up going for the manual option, it's fitted with a higher end chronograph bridge, which has larger sized jewels, and it also comes with 58 hours of power reserve, versus the automatic which just has 48. The SW510 is a 2-register chronograph movement with a running seconds via the left hand subdial and a 30-minute chronograph subdial on the right hand side. One of the most important things when offering a reissue watch is its accuracy to the original design. If the watches are very different to those originals, then they're just simply not reissues. They're more like watches like the Black Bay 58 that are inspired by an era of models. Anyway, if you take a look at vintage examples, you'll be pretty hard pressed to notice any difference to these watches. The only real visual difference between the original and the reissue is the small T present on the dial of the vintage models for tritium. This has now been replaced with an L to represent luminova. It's a subtle, but it's a sensible change. Cases are exactly the same, with the correct finishes in all the right places, drilled lugs and closed case backs. To be honest, it's the same story with the bezel as well, as the smooth, bi-directional rotating bezels provide you with not just minute markers, but also hour markers underneath, meaning you can easily track both passing units of time, which is quite a nice little feature. I've recently just finished 1 week with both of these watches, and there are a few key differences I found after some time on the wrist. Of course, both watches with a 38mm case size are just ridiculously comfortable on my 7¼ inch wrist. It's worth mentioning that the wrist on screen is actually closer to 7 inches. Obviously with two watches that are reissues, their designs will inherently offer charm and character, but after spending a week with both of them, the broad arrow hand model pulls this off just a little bit better. There's no denying this version has a little bit more going on with the hands used, from the subdial hands to the thin, elegant steel chronograph hand. The other model, which is slightly more of a 70s design, keeps things clean, balanced and timeless. To be honest, I actually find this lollipop hand version a lot more legible and almost modern at times. That probably could sound a bit stupid, but it does remind me of the Omega Speedmaster and how that watch approaches its classic design. That feeling of history is there, but this Chronomaster Aviator isn't really forcing the fact it's a reissue. The broad arrow hand version, on the other hand, is much more rooted in an almost military chronograph-like style. When you combine the presence of the yellowed loom throughout the hands and hour markers, with that matte black dial and pop of red in the subdial, to me it really screams military heritage. Whereas the watch with the lollipop hand is much more of a traditional chronograph look that is normally associated with motorsport. To be totally honest, I actually surprised myself when I realised I preferred the lollipop chronograph hand version for a few reasons. To start with, the simplistic design of this dial and the understated appeal of it speaks more to me. Normally I'm all about character and charm, and if you've seen any of our videos you probably already know that, but I don't feel like I'm missing out on any of the charm here. It is just less characterful than the broad arrow. And the other reason was probably down to the movement. This model was fitted with the manual wind movement, so any opportunity to shave off 1mm from the thickness, and I'm all for it. I actually think my opinion on this isn't something that would be shared with everyone, so we're really interested to know which dial version you prefer and why. Let us know your thoughts on this in the comments below. If you're interested in hearing more about these watches, be sure to head over to the WatchGecko online magazine for more information, pictures and thoughts. We'll drop a link to the review in the description below. Another key aspect of why these watches have been such a pleasure to wear is down to their ability to suit a range of watch straps. First we have the Radstock Racing, which is easily one of the best straps to pick for watches with a little bit of history. A great thickness, beige stitching, beautiful soft lining, and unique hand painted touches across the strap really bring a watch to life. The Classic Bond Herringbone offers everything that is great about the traditional Classic Bond you've come to expect from us, but just throws in two welcome twists. The first being the silky soft herringbone nylon, and the next twist is the inclusion of the beige colour, ideal for watches with aged lume. And now for the lollipop hand version, and we start with the Aldergrove Aviation. This strap brings faux rivets to design, emulating what you might have seen on original pilot's watches. Of course, this watch does have the diving aspects to it as well, so it's not a completely historically accurate option, but nevertheless it does lift the dial of the watch and does feel incredible on the wrist. Finally, we end on the vintage Bond Herringbone. When I suggested this combination, I wasn't totally sure how it would turn out, but I didn't really need to be that concerned, as the strap looks great when fitted. These strap shoes are herringbone nylon, so you know they're super wearable, but this one in particular also has raised stitching on the red, so the end result has a beautiful textured feel to it. We like to be fully honest in these videos, and there were a few things that I noticed with the watches that we wanted to highlight. To start with, I think it's great to see that hands are polished on these pieces, but it is a shame that they are completely flat. If they are chamfered, you'd remove any problems with completely washed out or unlit hands, which in turn would further increase the legibility. In Nivada's defence, it does look like the original models also did have flat hands. So this next point, and actually our final point, may be due to the fact that this was a prototype watch. However, we couldn't help but notice the loud rotor noise on the automatic Nivada. I believe I've seen this in the past where custom rotors have been fitted, however due to the closed caseback we cannot actually confirm if this is the case. So some final thoughts on these watches, as well as our final advice for you if you're in the market for one. Nivada Grenchen have nailed something which is so easy to fail at. They have listened to what the market wants, both in execution, their price points, and the time of launching. They've resisted any urges to increase the size, add dates, or overly modernise the watches to a point they didn't really need to. The changes they have done, including the movements from Valjoux to Solita, are sensible, and ones that will benefit the wearer both practically and from a damage to wallet point of view. Starting from around £1,300 for a full mechanical chronograph, from a well-respected brand with history and a ton of choice available, they really are a brilliant option. My only really big negative is that they've just made the £1,000 to £2,000 price point even more competitive, which I guess isn't a bad thing. Anyway, we'd like to thank Nivada Grenchen for sending these two watches out on loan. To find out more, and to order your very own, be sure to head over to their website. We'll leave a link in the description below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.